McMichael to the front. Chikrin, great pass. Ovechkin scores! And the captain converts. Ovechkin has room. Snapshot on the way. Score! Alex Ovechkin.
Score! It's Ovechkin off the faceoff, and he draws one closer to Wayne Gretzky. Ovechkin stays red hot.
As soon as we're done talking about Rantanen and everything today, this will become once again the biggest story in hockey until the playoffs, the Great Eight's chase of the all-time goals record. 9 away from Gretzky to tie it, 10 to break it. And a guy who watched an awful lot of those goals is our Bruce Boudreau, who coached Ovi, of course, in Washington. You were an eyewitness to this for, 329 games, a front row seat. And back then when you were coaching him, I'm still not sure we all thought this was possible. What has impressed you most about this chase?
Well, durability for sure is, to me, is a big thing. I mean, he's scored 30 goals for 19 straight years. I mean, that to me is pretty incredible. And and he doesn't get hurt. There's so many times where he'd sit to me, and I could tell stories over and over about him. You know that he'd say Russian machine doesn't hurt, doesn't break, and he didn't. And he was just built. His legs were twice as big as anybody else's. His body was thicker, and he's just a durable machine that is a great hockey player. He's obviously the greatest hockey player I ever coached. But the thing that people don't realize is hockey IQ is not just for scoring. He makes plays, and he's physical. He does what he has to do, and it's going to make him the greatest goal scorer of all time.
And even when the Russian machine does break down, that broken leg earlier this year, he's back in 2.5 weeks or something ludicrous like that.
Yeah, go figure. Listen, he had a broken leg in the middle of the season, and he's still going to get 40 goals. Have we ever heard? Stories is better than anybody. Have you ever heard of something like that happening? I've never heard of it happening. And that's what makes him one of a kind. And I think people that are one of a kind should have records that are almost unbreakable. And Ovi's one of those guys.
Well, we thought this Gretzky record was going to be unbreakable, and look what he's done. And would Ovi have maybe broken it already if you'd have let him on early? He had to earn his empty netters with you?
Yeah, at the beginning, hey, listen, I was in awe. I was an American League coach coming up, and you're looking and you're going, there's Ovi. I got to give him ice time, But as the team kept winning, and he was still sort of cheating on if he'd get an empty net chance, I'd sit him down and I said, Ovi, when you can learn to think defense when we've got an empty net opportunity rather than offense, I'll put you there. And then I'd put him out there and he'd block a shot, and I say, okay, now you're going to get rewarded. You get a chance to keep going out there. So it was up to him. But at first, there'd be 6-on-4 in our zone, and he'd be at the red line, and I'd go, hey, Ovi, that's not how this thing works here. We got to come back and help out a little bit.
You held him to the same standards on the ice, but not necessarily off the ice. You have a million stories, but my all-time favorite is the Ovi curfew story.
Yeah, you know what? It was my first year, it was my third year actually, but I'd known now what media was all about here. And if you sit somebody out, especially of Ovi's nature, it's going to really it's going to be all over North America. So the one night, George had asked, because we had a young team that liked to have fun, and so he says, I want you to start calling curfews. And I go, oh, geez, I've never called curfews in my life, George. What's going on? And he says, no, start calling curfews. And so, I felt really bad. I'd phoned Mike Knuble. He was 39 years old, and he had 4 kids, and I wanted to know if he was in. But if they're not in, and I wouldn't phone everybody, but I'd have to phone, the Mike Greens, the Ovies, and such. And so I remember the one time we were in New Jersey, and it's 5 to 11, and I used to phone 15 minutes early just in case I couldn't get a hold of them. I had time, right? So, and I'm phoning and Ovi's not answering his phone. So I phoned the team services guy, and I said, hey, Ian, you have to find Alex. I have to have him in, because if he's not in, okay, then I have to do something. I don't want to do something. I don't want to make this a bigger thing than it is. And he phones and there's 3 minutes to 11. There's no answer. At 1 minute to 11, I get a phone call and it's Alex and he's going, "Hey, coach." And I said, "Yeah." And all I hear is this electric music in the background as loud as can be. I mean, there's people talking all over the place. I says, "Are you in your room tonight?" And he goes, "Yeah, coach." I said, "Okay, goodbye." And I hung up on him.
Yes.
He told me he was in, so
course.
I let it in.
Coach, thank you for this. Appreciate it. Yes, Russian Machine doesn't break down. Russian Machine also loved the clubs. In his day as well.
Yes, he did.
There is Bruce Boudreau. In these early hours of TradeCentre, we like to do some story time, and that's what we're going to do. Look at have you ever had an assembly of great talent and mediocre talent on the stage at exactly the same time? Guys who Ovi has scored on, guys who have played against Ovi. We'll all miss Marc-Andre Fleury, by the way, when he retires. Ovechkin will really miss him. He scored 28 goals on Fleury, 24 on Lundqvist. 8 on Marty, 1 on Noodles, Weeksy as well. I want your best Ovi stories, right? It takes a village to chase 894. You guys have all done your part in helping with history. Start with Noodles. Best Ovechkin story.
Well, the only Ovechkin story that I have is on ice is I played against him once, and once only. That's why he only got me once, because I believe I would be higher on that list if I played against him multiple times. But I got a rare start in Florida, which all I can see when I watch this video, I can hear Jerome McGinley say, "You've got a lazy glove and zero flexibility." So there it is. Ovi gets around, and I will say, to my credit, I did have a decent game that game, and I stopped him. That game went into a shootout, and I got him in the shootout, but I did not get him in the second period in that game.
Marty, you also played a part in history, but it was maybe the other Biron that got this chase rolling.
Yeah, so my brother played 1 year with the Washington Capitals in 05-06, coming out of the lockout. First year for Ovi. And Glenn Hanlon, the coach of the Washington Capitals, was using my brother as the one-timer, right-handed big shot from the left flank. And he scored 3 straight power play goals in 3 games. And all of a sudden, the next practice, they come in and they've got Ovechkin in the office. And my brother's, "I just scored in 3 straight games. What's going on?" And Ovi kind of felt like that may be a good spot for him. So Ovi scored in the next 2 games, power play goal, and the rest of history. My brother never saw the power play again. So good on him.
Now, Ovi scores his first playoff goal against you. Any others stand out?
Yeah, game 7, so we're up 2-1 in the second period, and I kept thinking to myself, all I have to do is be big in net. If Ovechkin has the puck, I just want to be big. And he came down the right wing, and he let go of a wrist shot right here, right over my shoulder. I'm 2-3 feet outside of the crease. Like, that was either going to hit me or go in. He tied it at 2. Luckily, we got Joffrey Lupul to score in overtime, and Bruce Boudreau has been hating me since because we beat him in game 7.
We also have a few snipers up here on board. Odog and Carlo, of course, scoring in Ovi's first game in Canada. And Carlo, yours, we don't often say highlight reel goal and Carlo Poliaco in the same sentence, but
for me, it was a highlight reel goal.
Yeah,
It's my first NHL goal.
Yeah.
And I watched Ovi that game score 2 absolute rockets.
Right.
So I had a chance in the third period in this game. And as you can see, he's threatened by my rocket. He doesn't want to block it, and neither does Brent Johnson in net because he fumbles it and it ends up in the back of the net. And that was my first NHL goal against Alexander Ovechkin.
hey.
Jimmy, I never told anybody this, but I talked to him before the game. It was his first time in Canada, and he wasn't sure on where to set up shop on the power play. Right. So I told him, if you just watch me out there in odd man situations, I set up shop at the top of the face-off, and this is what I did. You just get it to me, and I fire it home. So I showed Ovi how to get it done, and that's my Ovi story.
So you're helping an opponent,
Exactly.
is what you were saying.
Exactly.
Gio, you were the oldest player in the NHL, at 40. The distinction now belongs to Ovi. What was the toughest part of playing against him?
Oh, I was lucky because I played the left side on the penalty kill, so I didn't have to block too many of those one-timers. But he could just score from anywhere. Anywhere in the zone, you let him get that shot off, and it has a chance to go in. My funniest Ovi story, though, goes over to Russia. When I went to play in Russia, I played for actually his club team that he grew up with, Moscow Dynamo. And got the chance to skate with him. He was still there because our season started before there. So he's still there skating with us in Russia. And His dad was on the bench. I'll never forget it. He comes down and he rips one right off the crossbar, and the puck breaks in half. And I've never seen someone so excited. He grabbed that puck and was showing his dad, skating down the ice. And I was kind of in awe, too. I'm like, how did he do that? I'm like, that puck must have been really frozen. But come to learn now, he has 800. It makes sense. He has over 800.
Are you going to tell us you did that, too?
The one thing about he was the first guy that I saw, him and Sid, where we watched Wayne and Mario and all those guys, and they were so good. And I kept saying for so many years, like, none of these guys are going to be like that. And Ovi and Sid, they were the first two where you watched them immediately, and you're like, these are going to be the next wave of guys.
Yeah. When we do the top 10 lists, which we kind of do a lot on TSN, and the top 10 goals or Ovi goals, this one back in 2006, January the 16th against Phoenix, is usually number one going down backwards. You know who was on the Coyotes?
Probably
Mike Johnson, who played,
Is that him in front?
played 80 games that year, but missed 2 games, including that one.
Was it your fault?
If I had played, he probably wouldn't have even scored.
Yeah, you would have back-checked hard, Dove,
The
right?
entire thing would have fallen apart. But yes, that was one of the 2 games I missed. I remember being in the press box. We weren't working out back then, just watching the game. And you watch that whole thing break down and the over the shoulder, and you just couldn't comprehend what he just did. How? How did he do that? Then you went down after the game, and the guys on the bench, Wayne Gretzky was our coach. We were all just like, that is the craziest goal we've ever seen, just the physics of it all. And then I think about Paul Mara, the defenseman, who played it pretty well. Thank you for the highlight reel. Brian Boucher in net. He's out there swimming, always. And then the worst of it all, Steve Gainey. He was the forward who came back there to try to get it. He maybe played 20 games for us this year, maybe played 50 his whole NHL career, and yet for the rest of his life, he's the guy who's blowing his ACL out there trying to pick the puck as it goes in. So that was one for the ages. But yeah, I think if I was there, probably wouldn't have had it.
Awesome stories. Obviously, I don't have an on-ice story, and this is a really silly Ovechkin story. But back in 2008, you know how teams do introductions that last all season long, that they play at the beginning of the game when the players came on? The Capitals had this idea to do a rock band, and it would be Ovi and the Caps, and Brooks Laich was in it, Jose Theodore was the goalie, but they had them all glammed up like real rockers. Like Ovi had so much makeup on, eyeshadow on. So we did an interview for this piece, and we aired the feature. But at the same time, something happened in the league. I can't remember if somebody got suspended or somebody got traded or signed. And so That's Hockey and SportsCenter said, can you get a clip from Ovi about what happened? So I asked Ovi, as soon as we're done our feature interview, a serious question. And they aired it on That's Hockey and SportsCenter without the context of the feature. So here's Ovi with his hair like that and all this eyeshadow on, and just on That's Hockey talking about something ridiculously serious. I'm sure everybody at home, Fred and Ethel in Saskatchewan are going, what the heck happened to Ovi? But just a remarkable chase. And by all indications, he's going to get this done by the end of the season. But we'll all be watching, including Wayne Gretzky. We'll talk to Winnipeg Jets when we return here on TradeCentre.